76 years ago, my late father, Chaim Herzog, serving as an officer in the British Army, took part in the liberation of the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp in April 1945, only 3 months after the Red Army liberated Auschwitz-Birkenau in January that year today. He told me that he never forgot what he saw there. The piles of bodies and skeletons, the survivors ravaged by disease and starvation. When he returned to Bergen-Belsen and Auschwitz decades later as the President of the State of Israel, he laid stones from the hills of Jerusalem in both camps. And he placed the stones where he quoted in the stones from Psalm 38, Tehillim, V'mach'ovi negdi tamid, and my pain is ever with me. Yes, the pain will stay with us Jews forever. It must stay with us forever. And it must stay with all humanity forever. Unfortunately, as the years go by, it seems that in some parts of the world, the pain and horror are fading. We are seeing an extremely worrying rise in anti-Semitism, not only online, as was well said by the minister, but also in the streets and in the political arena. A research which the Jewish agency, which I head, recently carried out together with the Israeli Institute for National Security Studies, INSS, shows clearly that in a number of key European countries, extremist parties from all sides of the spectrum are polluting the political and public discourse with anti-Semitic tropes and rhetoric, while traditional centrist parties are growing weaker. Sadly, we found that 76 years after the Holocaust, there are a growing number of politicians in Europe who intentionally use anti-Semitic language and ideas for political gain. And together, with the rise in anti-Semitism, we are seeing increasingly blatant attempts to distort and deny the history of the Holocaust. Dear friends, in light of these dangers and risks, we must work together, the government of Israel, Jewish organizations, NGOs, and of course the Jewish Agency, to ensure that the promise of never again remains not just a promise, but becomes a plan of action. We must ensure that the next generation who will not have the privilege to meet survivors hears their testimonies and honors their legacies. We must encourage all countries to integrate accurate Holocaust education into their national curriculum. And we must show zero tolerance for anti-Semitic incitement, rhetoric, and libels wherever they appear. Every free country and every person who values human rights has a duty to help preserve the lessons of the Holocaust. However, European governments have a foremost special responsibility, not only to preserve the memory of the past, but to ensure that today's European Jewish communities can live safely, full and open Jewish lives, and practice their traditions freely. Unfortunately, legislation and initiatives in Europe against kosher slaughter and similar efforts, such as attempts to ban circumcisions, Brit Milah, not only make it more difficult for Jews to practice their religion, but they also send a clear signal to European Jews that their rights are not respected and that ultimately their way of life is not welcome in today's Europe. That is why I recently turned to the leaders of Europe to alert them to the growing sense of discomfort and rejection among a number of Jewish communities who feel that Jewish traditions and observance are being increasingly challenged by parts of European publics and legislators. I ask these leaders to reject all such legislation, which would be tantamount to outlawing Judaism as a whole, and to oppose any attempts to restrict the religious freedoms of European Jewish communities. My friends, 76 years ago, when my father arrived in Bergen-Belsen, he walked among the survivors and said to them in Yiddish, I'm a Jew, I'm from Eretz Israel, I came to save you. 3 years later, David Ben-Gurion, as chairman of the Jewish Agency in this building where I sit at, proclaimed the independence of the State of Israel and declared that the state would be open to all in gatherings of the exiles. Today, as chair of the Jewish Agency, I promise you, and all of our Jewish brothers and sisters, that we will never be silent, that we will always speak out and act to preserve the memory and lessons of the Holocaust and to ensure the security, identity, and religious freedom of Jewish communities everywhere. We will continue to feel the pain of the past and to use that pain to strengthen our determination to build a vibrant and secure Jewish future in Israel, in Europe, and around the world. Thank you very much.